Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're talking about my predictions for Nintendo announcements at Game Awards 2022. Every year as we approach the Game Awards, there is an excitement that stirs. But this excitement isn't necessarily for which games are going to win which awards, which there is a bit of that admittedly. This year I'm excited that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has actually gotten some nominations. Finally a Xenoblade game is in the Game Awards. But the bigger reason why we tend to pay attention to the Game Awards is because of the announcements. And throughout the Switch generation, we have gotten some significant Nintendo announcements at the Game Awards. So today, what we're focusing on is talking about what sort of announcements I'm expecting this time around. Are there going to be a lot? Are there going to be a little? Well, that's what we're talking about today. But before we jump into things, let me first very briefly mention my social media. You may see a few different things here on the screen. You can check that all out. It's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe or perhaps consider joining as a member. So before I discuss what I think is going to be at the Game Awards this time around from Nintendo, I want to talk about what has come and what hasn't come, because I feel like that's going to give us some better perspective here. Because over the years we have gotten some fairly substantial announcements. We've gotten announcements for Joker in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. We've gotten announcements for Sephiroth in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. We've gotten Breath of the Wild trailers at the Game Awards. We've gotten even the announcement of Bayonetta 3 for the first time. This was the initial announcement of the game being in development. That was at the Game Awards back in 2017. So there have been some significant announcements. However, something I've noticed is that closer to when the Switch was coming out and leading up to that time, it seemed like the announcements, the presence by Nintendo was more significant. Before the Switch came out, we saw that Breath of the Wild had a presence at the Game Awards. We got a few teasers before the Switch came out, leading up to its simultaneous release with Breath of the Wild. But then even after the Switch came out, that year of the Game Awards, 2017, we got the announcement for Bayonetta 3 and then also the Champion's Ballad. And the year after that, we had Joker. And during this time, Reggie Fils-Aimé was the president of Nintendo of America and is also a known friend of Jeff Keighley, the one who runs the Game Awards. And we saw them together, they would show up at the awards together, they would do things and plan things beforehand. But now Reggie's no longer with the company. And it does kind of feel like since he left, the Nintendo's presence at the Game Awards has waned. Now you could make the argument that this waning has more to do with the fact that when we saw all these big announcements leading up to Switch release and a couple years after Switch release, this had more to do with pushing the system. Nintendo wanted to make sure they had a significant presence during that time because they really want to get word out there about the Switch and its games. So I bring this up because I am trying to temper my expectations here, because the fact of the matter is, the kind of announcements we've been getting lately just aren't as significant and as plentiful as they used to be. Back then, around 2017, 2018, we came to expect 2 to 3 relatively significant announcements for Nintendo at the Game Awards. Now, maybe it might be more like 1 or 2, and they won't be as significant. So I'm not really expecting something like a Bayonetta 3 announcement where they'll announce Bayonetta 4. If they do that, oh, that'd be amazing, but I'm just not expecting it right now. I don't want to fall into the trap of buying into a rumor that doesn't ultimately turn out to be true. One great example was Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. This was rumored and sworn to exist and was totally going to get announced at the Game Awards. Did not happen. Now ultimately I'm of the belief that Metroid Prime Trilogy HD was in the talks at the time, but is now going to be more like Metroid Prime HD, and then eventually 2 and 3 will come down the road. But the main point to be made here is that there was this big rumor of a big thing that we were hoping to get that was going to get announced, and it did not happen. And what I'm trying to get at here is that basically, I don't expect announcements for new projects that aren't officially confirmed at the Game Awards. Can they happen? Yes, because look at Bayonetta 3. That is an example, but that happened back in 2017 when Reggie used to work with Nintendo, and he was working closely with Jeff Keighley to get things done back then. This is also when the Switch was coming out. It was the first year of the Switch. They really wanted to hype things up, get people excited, get big announcements out there early on so people were aware of other big projects coming. It was all about attracting attention for the Switch. It was marketing. Now, of course, having games announced at the Game Awards is marketing. But with that in mind, when a company is talking with the people in control of the Game Awards, they're going to be thinking about what kind of games make sense for the Game Awards as well. So something like a Pikmin 4 or Fire Emblem Engage, while I would love to see updates for those games, I'm not necessarily expecting them at the Game Awards because they don't necessarily appeal to the traditional Western audience, which the Game Awards tends to sort of attempt to appease. And I think this has a lot to do with why Xenoblade, a pretty successful, highly critically acclaimed series, has been relevant at the Game Awards for pretty much its entire existence until Xenoblade 3, but now Xenoblade 3 has a few different nominations, so perhaps the Game Awards is opening up a little bit, perhaps the world is opening up a little bit, and being more open to other styles of games and genres. So maybe that's the case, maybe something like a Pikmin 4 or Fire Emblem Engage could see an update at the Game Awards, and Nintendo may want those games shown off there because it may make sense. But I don't think so. I don't think it's likely, at least. I don't think that's kind of the right direction to go, and I also don't think it's likely to expect a brand new announcement like, say, for example, announcing F-Zero at the Game Awards. Now, if that happens, my goodness, I will cry and scream tears of joy. It'll be an amazing moment. But I don't expect that. Maybe in a direct later next year, but not at the Game Awards. What I do think we'll see, though, is an update on something that's coming in the not-so-distant future. So what are major projects that are coming in the not-so-distant future? Fire Emblem Engage and Pikmin 4 would fit that, but also appeal to a Western audience and would kind of fit sort of the style of the Game Awards. Well, the new Mario movie and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. These are my prime candidates for announcements at the Game Awards. Will we see both, though? That I don't know. I'm honestly pretty skeptical that we'll see both. I do think there is a somewhat reasonable chance that we could see both because they both make sense. One's coming out in April, the other one's coming out in May, so the timing works out to market both of them to show them off at the Game Awards in front of a large audience. They're already established things that we know about. It does make sense. It kind of fits all these speculative rules we've sort of established. But before I continue on here, let me just kind of clear up these speculative rules. There are no hard rules. What Nintendo Game Awards decide may make sense for one year, may be entirely different the next. So with that in mind, let me continue on with what I'm getting at here regarding potentially an announcement for both Tears of the Kingdom and a new trailer for the Mario movie. Recent history would suggest that we're probably not going to get two significant announcements at the Game Awards because the last few years, well, Nintendo's presence at the Game Awards has become not so significant, not really as significant compared to the early years of Switch. But something that may be changing that Nintendo may want to do is sort of ramping up their marketing again. They may be getting ready to move on to a next generation system. The Switch is still going well, but there are signs that we are starting to approach that moment where things are going to start to trend downwards, and Nintendo may want to avoid a stark drop-off here and have a smooth transition into their next generation where there's hopefully both backwards and forwards compatibility. And so with all that in mind, we may start to see more of a ramp up of marketing where Nintendo does have more of a presence at events like the Game Awards, and we start to see major things like both a Mario movie trailer and also Tears of the Kingdom. And there is speculation going on right now, especially here on the channel, that perhaps Tears of the Kingdom could be used as a launch title for new hardware come this May. So if that's the case, it's even more reason to talk about Tears of the Kingdom at the Game Awards. But of course, this is speculation. We don't know if there will be new hardware next year. We don't know if Nintendo's going to ramp up their marketing for new hardware. They probably will, but we don't really know how close that is. So to err on the side of caution, I'm going to assume we get an announcement for one of these two things. And if I had to say the one that's more likely, I'm going to say it's a new trailer for the Mario movie. The Mario movie is coming out a little bit sooner than Tears of the Kingdom. And as I said earlier, there is a possibility that Tears of the Kingdom could be coming out with new hardware. And if that's the case, maybe Nintendo wants to kind of hold back on showing off information for Tears of the Kingdom until they're ready to show off more details about this hardware, maybe in January or February when we may actually see a Nintendo Direct. Main point here is that regardless if there's hardware or not, Nintendo's been very careful about giving us information about Tears of the Kingdom, and maybe they don't want to show that off at the Game Awards. They may want to show off more information about Tears of the Kingdom in a more controlled environment where they can better advertise the nuances and changes of Tears of the Kingdom over Breath of the Wild. Maybe. But with the Mario movie, this is something that's going to be super mainstream. Everyone's going to be watching the Mario movie, paying attention to the Mario movie. It's something that more people are going to pay attention to than even Tears of the Kingdom. As significant as that will be, it's going to be the sequel to the best-selling Zelda game ever, with potential of maybe coming close, if not even surpassing Breath of the Wild. But even if it does, the Mario movie is still going to be seen by more eyes than whatever sort of success we see from Tears of the Kingdom. So in my opinion, it does make more sense to be shown off at the Game Awards. And the Game Awards is no stranger to movie trailers, and if it's a video game adaptation movie trailer, well, even better. And it's also totally possible we may see another sort of announcement for Nintendo at the Game Awards that's maybe not as substantial. Maybe they'll give us an update on DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which does have multiple nominations at the show, or maybe for Splatoon, for example. Those are also possibilities, but the main one I think is going to be another trailer for the Mario movie, and there is a decent chance that we get an update for Tears of the Kingdom, but that's my secondary choice. And if we're really lucky, we see both. Maybe even also an update on Xenoblade Chronicles 3 with the DLC, but most likely just the Mario movie trailer. That's what I think is going to happen at the Game Awards. Those are my expectations, but what do you guys think? Do you guys have different opinions? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.